Well, he's making a list. He's checking it twice. Naughty and nice. That's kind of what we're talking about this Christmas season at Connection. And one of these days, there we go, I will not be in the dark. We are not really going your traditional route of like, hey, let's talk about the nativity and this baby who is laying in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes. It's more like, let's continue on with some of the stuff that we covered, those of you who are with us, in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapters 5 through 7, right? Because Jesus was talking about some of the sin issues that the people were wrestling with, and it wasn't just the external sins, but it was the internal behaviors that were behind the things that were going on. And so as we get into Galatians chapter 5 and take a look at the naughty list that is there, the acts of the sinful nature, we can see that it's more than just behavior modification. We're not just taking a look at those things and saying, hey, don't do that, shame on you, bad person, right? But we also want to always remember, like Jesus was talking about the motivations of the heart. And so we're continuing to go back to that and taking a look at it a little bit closer. Last week, we hit the first few of them together under the topic of sexual immorality. And so if you want to take a closer look at that and how to step towards purity in your physical relationships, you can go back and watch that. This week we're taking a look at idolatry. And again, Galatians chapter 5, page 975 in the Black Bibles we provide. Galatians 5, starting in verse 16. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things that you want to do. Right? The Spirit and the flesh, the natural desires, they're not on the same page. They're not on the same team. They're not even in the same galaxy. Right? Because there's the things that God would want us to do, and if we've been born into Christ, we believe and we've been made new, we want to act a different way than we do naturally. So the whole argument of like, it just comes naturally. It's the way I was made. That goes out the window because we were born again. Right? And so we're born again to a new way of doing things. And we read in here in verse 20, the next two things, idolatry and sorcery. Idolatry and sorcery. So the idea of idolatry is like anything that we put in our lives that has the competition for God's rightful place in our life. And that can be in a lot of different ways. Sorcery is really the idea of pursuing the evil things that are in direct opposition to what God would want. So the magic potions, the spells, like all the things that come to mind when you think of witchcraft and sorcery definitely go into this. But I would say like there's a lot of things that fit that caveat where we're pursuing spiritual answers from an unholy place, right? We're invoking the power of the evil spirits. And so as we dive into this idea of idolatry, I want to take us on a journey through the Old Testament. And so we're going to be in Exodus and Numbers, but some of those verses are going to be on the screen just to help us follow along with a little bit. But as I kind of mentioned to you last week, those of you who were with us, throughout this series, we will be showing clips from the movie Elf. If you haven't seen it yet, you've had 20 years, no more excuses. And it's pretty good. Check this out.
Who the heck are you?
What are you talking about? I'm Santa Claus.
No, you're not.
Why, of course I am.
Well, if you're Santa, what song did I sing for you on your birthday this year?
Happy birthday, of course. So, how old are you, son?
4.
You're a big boy. What's your name?
Paul.
And what can I
Paul,
get you for Christmas?
Don't tell him what you want. He's a liar.
Let the kid talk.
You disgust me. How can you live with yourself?
Just cool it, Zippy.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Look, I'm not kidding.
You're a fake.
I'm a fake?
Yes.
How'd you like to be dead? Huh? No, he's kidding.
You stink.
I think you're gonna have a good Christmas, all
You
right?
smell like beef and cheese. You don't smell like Santa.
Okay, good.
So when I grew up, there was a popular cartoon. I think they've remade that into a few movies. It was called Transformers. And sometimes there is more than meets the eye. right? Sometimes it's not always the way that it seems, and Buddy definitely found out that this dude was not Santa Claus. And I think that there's a lot of things in our life that we have grown accustomed to as what we would call knockoffs, right? They promise to be as good as the main thing, but they're not. They're not the real thing, and they're really in the caveat of maybe generic. When I was growing up, Air Jordans were pretty popular. Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan in his heydays, and so it was almost every kid's dream, like to own a pair of Air Jordans. But at one store that we shopped at, you could actually buy a pair of Jordashes. Anybody remember Jordache? Right? So you could get these shoes that kind of look like it, but they're not quite the same quality level. It wasn't just that. There were other things that we could get. So before MP3s were out, we would have to listen to music on other devices. So it was an amazing thing when we could move from the boom box to a portable tape player. Anybody remember those days? Like you pick up the Sony Walkman, and then they later came out with the Discman, and so you could take the CD on the road and try not to skip the thing. But if you couldn't afford the Sony variation, and as was my world, we went to a brand called GPX. It was not Sony. And it wasn't just the things we wore, what we listened to. Sometimes it was what we ate. Did your mom ever come home from the grocery store with stuff that wasn't quite right? Like back in the day, you remember Hamburger Helper? And if it wasn't, Hamburger Helper, it was Panburger Partner. Panburger Partner, and it just didn't, like the generic mac and cheese, just not the same as Kraft. Like it doesn't matter what they put on the box. It just doesn't measure up. There are other types of food. Anybody get the generic cereals growing up? I mean, you didn't get Fruit Loops, you got Tutti Fruities, right? You didn't get Rice Krispies, you got Crispy Rice. Right? These things that they promise, but they don't quite measure up. One of my go-tos as a kid was Mountain Dew. And I can remember getting the Mountain Lightning. Not the same. Not the same. I would even say when it says Mountain Dew on the container, be careful. I went to a convenience store one time, grabbed a Mountain Dew, went to my car, started drinking the thing. I about spit it out all over my dash. It was a Diet Dew. It is not the same. It's not the same. Right? Generics do not add up. Now, sometimes we need the generics. Like most of us, we're not going to afford that big ring, and cubic zirconium, it's a lot cheaper. Right? And I don't know if you've ever had anybody come up and looking like, oh, that's fake. The only time that happens is at the jewelry store. Right? Medications, the generic, you can save a load of cash just going generic. Right? So there are things, there's no harm in going that way, but what we need to realize is most of the time, these knockoffs are just that. They promise a lot, but they don't really measure up. And this is what Buddy was up against, right? This guy looked like Santa Claus. He was playing the part of Santa Claus, but he was not Santa Claus. And there are lots of things in our life that look like God. They make the same promises of some of the things that God offers to us. But in reality, they come far short of being what God really is. And this is the idea of idolatry that we're talking about. So to take you back to Exodus, in chapter 16, verse 3, this is on page 58 in the black Bibles we provide. Exodus chapter 16, verse 3. To give you a little bit of background information, because I know not everybody knows the story. The Bible is one humongous story, and all the pieces just kind of fit together, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you in a little bit. But the Israelites have been enslaved in Egypt. It's a land and not their own. They went there for protection, and they got instead enslaved. They had to make lots of bricks, and not a whole lot of privileges associated with being in slavery in Egypt. But they cried out to God, and God delivered them by his mighty powers, namely 10 plagues that came against the Egyptians, but spared the Israelites. And then on top of that, they were let free out of Egypt and were making their way towards the promised land. They came up to a body of water, and they couldn't part that. But then God split the Red Sea, and they crossed on dry ground, and it swallowed up their enemies. All along the way, they've been guided by fire and cloud, God's miraculous provision and direction for them on this journey. They get out there in the wilderness, and they've got nothing to eat, and God provides bread from heaven, manna. They didn't have anything to drink. God instructs Moses to tap the rock with his stick, and they have water coming out of a rock, of all places. God is providing each step of the way. And then we get to this chapter 16, verse 3, and this is what it says. And the people of Israel said to them, would that you had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. This is just one place where they utter their dissatisfaction with what Moses is doing to the people, or because he represents God, what God is doing. And so here's one of the challenges. Buddy says of this man masquerading as Santa Claus, you sit on a throne of lies. Right? What are some of the lies that you and I are led to believe that actually mislead us in the journey? The first one is this: lies from the past, or lies from behind. And they thought going out of Egypt into this promised land that everything was going to be fantastic. And when it was too hard, they looked backwards. And when they looked backwards, they said, oh man, it was so great in Egypt. Right? We had everything we wanted. We had pots of meat. We had bread we could eat to our heart's content. And now we're out here in the wilderness, and all we got's this manna. Right? All we've got is. And this can be a challenge for you and I, right? Especially on our spiritual journey. We're led away from the captivity of sin and shame, and we're led in a new route, and we go, you know what, hey, I'm going to leave that behind. I'm going to go to what's ahead. And then we realize what's ahead is hard, right? God doesn't promise that it's going to be easy. And we get into some of those challenges, and then what we end up saying or thinking in ourselves is, it was so much easier before. It was so much easier before. I didn't have these challenges. I mean, I had people I can lean on. I mean, some of those coping mechanisms I had back then, like, oh, I kind of miss that. And so all of these things kind of just call us back. And what we fail to remember is like, oh yeah, that was really hard then too. Oh, I didn't have any freedom then. Oh, they took away all this stuff. I had to work really hard. We forget all the bad things. Do you ever get enticed by the old way of doing things? And you think, oh, it was so much better. I mean, sometimes we can do that even in our culture today. I mean, there are times I go, man, life would be easier. Maybe even if we were like Amish and we didn't have all the technology and all the stuff that we were leaning on. And we start to think about the old days, the good old days. Remember where we didn't have electricity or indoor plumbing, and we went outside to use the restroom, and the good old days. They were pretty amazing. The good old days when we didn't have access to medical care, where we had to travel by horse and buggy or walk, the good old days. Right? It's easy to be captivated by certain things. It kind of entices us, romanticizes what was, but we fail to see what the reality was. And here's the lie. Right? The lie is it was better back then. And what it does is it denies the salvation of God and His provision. When the Israelites were grumbling and complaining, they were not being thankful to God for delivering them from captivity. They were not appreciating all of the miraculous things that He did for them along the way. And when you and I get focused on the lies of the past, we deny the things that God has done to get us where we are. And we go, oh, it was so much better. Not to mention God did this and this. And wow, look at how God provided for me and delivered me. Another lie that we tend to believe is the lies that are ahead. The lies that are ahead. This one comes from Numbers chapter 13, page 121. Numbers chapter 13, starting in verse 32, it says this. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land the which we had gone out to spy, is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim. And we seemed ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. Right? The challenge here is that they saw the obstacles that were in the road ahead. Does this ever happen to you? You have this great opportunity that lies in front of you. And even though it promises great things, all you can think is, what if? Man, if I do this, I'm going to have to make some hard choices. If I do this, maybe I'm going to have to change my friend group. If I do this, like I'm going to have to be more disciplined. If I do this, I can't do the fun things that I wanted to do. And so we get caught in this tension of like, oh, wow, look, it's amazing where I came from. And, oh, it's too scary to go forward to where I was. Right? And both are lies. The lies that this was so amazing back then, and the lies that this is way harder. And we forget to look back and go, oh, wow, look at all the things that God did. I mean, He provided victory through the plagues, through the leading, through the cloud and the fire, through the parting of the Red Sea, through the giving of food and water. And these guys, they're giants, but they will be like grasshoppers to us because God is on our side. That's not the attitude that they had. They believed the lie that said the challenges are too big, right? That it denies the power and the protection that God alone can offer. And so how is this true for you? How is maybe you've been called to something better, but you've backpedaled that a little bit because it's too hard? You've made some excuses along the way. You've realized as you've encountered some of the tough choices that, man, I don't know if I can do this. And so you kind of go back to what you know, what's comfortable. Right? And as they work to the tension, like you just can't help but just run back to the way things were. Because that's what you know. That's what was easy. The old way of life. And so in this tension, we also have to realize there are lies that are inside of us. What lies inside? We're going to be in Exodus chapter 32. Exodus chapter 32. The premise is that God has done all these great things. He's led the Israelites into the wilderness. Moses has been taken up to Sinai. He's been given the 10 Commandments, etched them on stone, came back down, presented them to the Israelites. And then he went back up to chat with God some more. And it says this in chapter 32, verse 1. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we don't know what's become of him." In verse 7, and the Lord said to Moses, "Go down to your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt. They have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, 'These are our gods, O Israel, who brought us out of the land of Egypt.'" You notice that the Israelites, they kind of, things turned south when they felt like they were all alone. When they felt like God had abandoned them. When they felt like Moses wasn't there to direct them. They've forgotten that when Moses came down and he presented the 10 Commandments, like the first one was, have no other gods. And the second one, make no images like that of a god. And yet here they are failing at both of them. Because in their insecurity, they felt like they needed something. And I think that that's the lie. The lie that Satan wants us to believe is that we're all alone. That God is not there. But Scripture tells us a truth, that God will never leave us or forsake us. Right? But He also doesn't promise it's going to be easy. Right? We're going to have to make some tough choices. We're going to have to make some decisions on our own to chase after God, to honor God. But when we believe that we're all alone, then we're tempted to make things that fulfill the needs that we have in our life. Right? These God-given needs for protection and provision. All of the things that God wants to give to you, but we chase after God and. Think about this for a moment. I worship God. I believe in God, but I also need this to feel peace. Right? Isn't that what Christmas is about? I need to feel peace. And so the thing that's going to help me feel peace is if I get maybe a better job, maybe a better paycheck, maybe I'm going to leave this relationship, right? Because I desire peace. Maybe I'm going to go chase after this addiction because it's going to help me cope. And I know in my life, my wife and I were just talking about some of these coping mechanisms. I have some fairly unhealthy coping mechanisms sometimes. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands to see who's with me, but sometimes I like to eat when I get stressed. Sometimes I eat when I get bored. Sometimes I eat because it's convenient. Sometimes I shop or spend money when I get stressed. Sometimes I just like to numb out, whether I withdraw or I turn into a screen. Right? There are things that sometimes I turn to, and it's not a healthy thing. And so what are some of the things that you and I turn to? What are the ands in our life? If I can just have this, then I'll be joyful. Right? Then I'll have hope. Then I'll have whatever. Right? All the things that God promises. And yet we chase those things and God, and that's what becomes idolatry. If you start thinking like, hey, if I don't have the and attached to God, then I'm not happy, the chances are that and has become your God. Right? Because you're telling God He is not good enough if you don't have the other stuff. This is a challenge. Do we not see that all of us, man, we can struggle so much with idolatry? Why? I mean, Galatians kind of hits it. Like we have this flesh nature that comes pretty natural. And it's all about self-preservation, self-enjoyment. And so people exist, stuff exists for me, rather than I exist to honor God and to love people and to serve people. But all this stuff, when we put it in our life to replace God, it leaves us empty, right? We're all alone. And here's a lesson that we learn from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and this takes us to the New Testament then. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, page 957. And this is how we can see how the story kind of weaves itself together. So this is happening way later, right? And Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he says this in verse 1. For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. Right? This is the story of Exodus. All of them had these amazing provisions. There was nothing that they did on their own. This was all sourced from God. And it says, nevertheless, with most of them, God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters as some of them were. In verse 11, now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages have come. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you except for what is common to man. God is faithful, and He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, He will provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. The whole concept is like these people, as much as they were arguing and bickering and complaining, they were also kind of spoiled brats. And sometimes we get all high and mighty and we think, oh, things are great. Right? Look at all the things that God did for us. He protected us whenever He was bringing punishment upon Egypt. He protected us whenever we were able to cross the Red Sea on dry ground. He guided us through the wilderness. He provided food and drink for us. And it's great. God did all of this stuff for all of those people. And God continues to pour out His blessings on us. and all of those things we have. And it says that if you're up there, right, if you're high and mighty, be careful lest you fall. I find that one of the most dangerous places I can be in is a place where I think everything is good. And we say it all the time, don't we? I'm just as guilty. How you doing? Good. Like, I'm good. Things are good. I've got everything under control. I got this. Right? And when I say I got this, I might as well be saying, all right, what's next? Because the rug is about to get pulled. Right? And if it's not that same sin issue I've been dealing with, it's another one. It's like whack-a-mole. Right? And I'm on to the next thing that I got to fix. And so we wrestle with that tension of trying to deal with these things, but the premise is that it was God who was there every step of the way, yet they denied God. How did they deny God? Well, we can see that they were brought out of Egypt where they were worshiping false gods, and they were doing it in very fleshly ways. And they were brought to the promised land because the people in Canaan were living in a way that honored false gods, and they were worshiping them in very fleshly, passionate ways. And they were supposed to drive them out, but instead of driving them out, they intermarried with them, and they said, hey, a little bit of yours with a little bit of ours, we'll have God and we'll bring them together. And that led them on a path of destruction. That same path is what God is trying to prevent us from going down. It's not God and, it's God is. Right? God is the maker. All of the things that you're seeking, they're found in Him. Everything else is just a cheap fake. It's a knockoff. Right? It's running after these things that promise greatness, but in the end leave you empty. In the end, they never measure up. In the end, they're just a throne of lies. Now we might be thinking, like, this is not something that we really deal with, like this idol thing. Like, we don't carve anything. We don't. But all of those things that we want, right? That next promotion, a little bit more money, some more stuff. I think Ephesians kind of hits it well. Ephesians and Colossians both kind of talk about some of the acts of the sinful nature and acts of the flesh in a little bit different light, but same concepts as that in Galatians. And both of these passages, whether it's Colossians 3 or Ephesians 5, mention covetousness as idolatry. Covetousness as idolatry, right? Because we're pursuing stuff in place of pursuing God. And if we just have that stuff, that thing, we'll be happy. We'll find contentment. It'll bring us joy. It'll be enough, right? But it takes the place of God. Now, Romans, which is just to the left of Corinthians, page 938, I think gives us a good indication of where we stand in all of this. It says in verse 18, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Right? When they act according to their sinful nature, they're actually suppressing the truth. They're enabling the lies. What can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and His divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks to Him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, and birds, and animals, and creeping things. In verse 28, and since they did not see it fit to acknowledge God, God gave them over to a debased mind to do what ought not be done. In Romans, we hear from Paul that you can see evidence that there is a God, a creator, just in His creation. And I love that. Science is about observation, and we can go out and we can observe the things that are here, and we can see, like, man, the way that the human body is constructed, the diversity that exists between all of His people is amazing. How do you get to that point without a creator? The food web and the way things work together in the world is just so amazing. How does that exist apart from a creator? from the depths of the creation into the expanse of the heavens. How do we see that without a creator? And he says, they are without excuse. We're without excuse. We can see that there is a creator in his creation. But what we can do, if we're not careful, is we exchange the truth for a lie. We take what was supposed to be wise and we become fools. And when we do that, when we exchange that truth and we start worshiping the created things instead of the creator, then he turns us over to a debased mind and allows our hearts to be darkened. Now, this isn't God doing this to us. It's us in our refusal to follow him. In our refusal, he turns us over to the things of the flesh. And we continue to do the things of the flesh. And you've been with us for a while, some of you. The wide road, right? The things of the flesh, it leads to destruction. It's going to turn you over to the things that will, in the end, destroy you. But what he wants to give you is life. And to get to life, it's going to take some hard choices. It's going to take a narrow road. You're going to have to strap up a little bit and get ready to fight. But it's all worthwhile. And the thing is, we can get complacent. We can buy the lies of the past and think, it was so much better. Right? We can buy the lies of the future going, man, it's too hard. The lies that exist within us, I'm all alone. No one will understand. Right? Or we can trust in a God who saves. A God who can do the miraculous and no other can. Right? It's not the creation man that we're worshiping. It's not man in his creation of things. Man just forms what already was. God made the stuff that man uses to make things. And yet we have a way of saying, just like the Israelites, oh, look, our God who brought us out of Egypt, that we just took off our wrists and our necks and put into a fire. And Aaron himself, I just threw it in the fire and poof, out popped a golden calf. I don't know where it came from. Right? We do these things and it makes absolutely no sense. But somewhere in our world, we begin to buy the lie. And it leads us down a pretty dark path. And so it kind of brings us up to what Joshua had offered to the Israelites. So to put it in context, Moses is leading them out of Egypt into the promised land. Moses doesn't get to go into the promised land, but one of the spies, Joshua, gets to lead them into the promised land. And they have amazing victories, and he's about ready to pass the torch on to the rest of Israel. And he said, hey, you need to choose who you're going to serve. Either the gods of your past that you had in Egypt, or the gods of your future that lie ahead of you in the land of Canaan, or you can choose God. As for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. Right? You can choose. You can choose who you're going to serve. The gods of your past, the things that you chased after before, the things that you know. Or you can chase the things that are yet ahead. Or simply put, you can trust God.